Hello and welcome to episode 155 of the Balanced Approach podcast with me, your host, Louis Padian. So today we'll be covering overcoming busy mornings and how to eat better when you have no time. This is so common with so many people I work with, how many people or I deal with. This seems to really run true, and hopefully today we can build around some aspects to pick that apart, why that might be happening, any sort of pressures around it. But I know there's a lot going on in people's lives. People are busy. We've got school runs, we've got getting work emails done, we've got getting clothes ready for the morning. You might have kids, you might have grabbing a coffee or something like that. You might have to pick someone up. So people's time is short in the morning. Mornings are hectic, and food plays a part of that. And often it is the last thing on people's mind, and they sort of, especially if they're trying to lose weight or eat a bit healthier, they feel, well, I'll just do without and I'll pick it up later on in the day, which can work, but often doesn't for a lot of people and trips them up further down the line. But one of the key things that I think is really important to say from the off before we jump into anything is skipping breakfast doesn't make you gain weight, doesn't make you lose weight, and vice versa. Having breakfast doesn't make you gain weight or lose weight either. It's very individual, and that's what I'm going to speak about from my perspective of working with people, but also citing some evidence as well around this. So this episode will discuss some of the myths and truths around breakfast, and hopefully find a morning structure that's going to work for you and hopefully set you up for success moving forward. So first of all, the breakfast myth. There is no universal rule for people in regards to whether they have to have breakfast or whether we should all skip breakfast. It's very individual. Both can be effective tools for people when trying to lose weight. I'm currently working with clients who don't really eat very much in the morning, potentially because they have work commitments, or they just don't particularly like it and they don't feel it's very filling, or on the quite low calories, so actually they find that's the easy meal to cut out. But there's a lot of people I work with as well who actually focus on getting breakfast in a good place for them, and that helps them have a better day moving forwards. And the research supports this in some aspects and hopefully picks apart some of the myths. You've probably heard of breakfast being the most important meal of the day, and that sort of originates from a Kellogg's funded study from years and years ago, where people who skipped breakfast ate more at lunch, but actually what they ate didn't match the calories. Actually, it was less calories than people who had on average at breakfast. So actually, they were still in better balance. But other research around meta-analysis saw people who were assigned breakfast ate about 260 calories more per day on average, but there was no evidence that skipping breakfast caused weight gain moving forward. So again, there's no blanket rule, and I think this is where I have to give you permission to try what's going to work for you. And if what you're currently doing isn't working for you, there might be some reasons for that we'll pick apart in a minute, but maybe it's worth trying the other way around it. If you don't currently have breakfast and you're not getting what you want to achieve or getting the results you want, then maybe it's worth having breakfast. If you're currently having breakfast, actually that might be the thing that's leading to worse decisions later on, or that what you're having isn't really matching up what you need. Maybe you don't really need it. And you don't have to stick on one side or the other. There's days where I'll have more to eat in the mornings, and there are days when I have less to eat. There's usually a reason behind that around sort of training, fueling, that sort of stuff, or responding to how my appetite is feeling as well. So in short, you do not need to force breakfast down you if you dislike it and think that you have to have it. It is a great opportunity to get some more protein and fiber in, which often people miss, but it isn't necessary for you to get the results that you want. But my overall view on this is usually around the diet as a whole, rather than just us focusing on, well, is breakfast definitive in this argument? Actually, what does breakfast lead to on later in the day? What does skipping breakfast lead us to do later on in the day? Do we have the tools to help manage that throughout the rest of the day? And how does that look the following day? Or what does happen the day before, which we'll talk about in a minute. So from my experience, having a decent breakfast, I'm someone who regularly has breakfast. There will be the odd occasion where I don't, or have something quite small, but usually I'll have a fairly substantial breakfast, making sure I get some proteins and fiber in there, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I tend to find it helps people with their focus, their mood, their food management throughout the day, their performance. But again, it is very much based on the individual. So why specifically am I talking around busy mornings? Well, we're all really busy. I challenge you to find someone who is not really busy. Even when I was a student, I felt busy. When actually looking back, I didn't have much to do at all, but it felt busy. And often people are sleep deprived, they're highly stressed, and all this sort of combines to make a perfect storm where, like I said, food comes quite far down the priority list and often gets forgotten about or is a last minute thought, and leads to us potentially not making good decisions later on, makes the day a bit harder. So we know around sleep restriction and how that increases people's appetite the following day and their desire to move. And that's seen in the research as well, that people tend to eat more, but actually there is no real meaningful increase in expenditure for eating more food, and often people tend to move a bit less because they feel tired. And when people are rushing around, that's full of lots of short, sharp decisions where we might not give it the most amount of thought, and that might cascade later on today. And what I tend to see with working with people is that if your morning starts stressed, then that stress is only going to build momentum throughout the day, and your decisions are probably not going to be ideal later on. So if we can start as we need to go on, a bit calmer, a bit more reassured, with a bit of a plan, then that can help managing that. If stress does rise throughout the day, actually we're starting from a lower position, so it doesn't feel as impactful later on. So making sure that if you are someone that's got a busy day ahead, potentially some fuel is going to be helpful with that. That's what we're talking around. Having a good amount of protein, having a good amount of fiber, something that's going to filling, that's something that you enjoy. And if you are underslept, being aware of that your drive for tasty foods might be increased. So actually us being aware of that and going, right, maybe I need to have some more filling meals. Maybe I don't aim for as big as a deficit today, or not a deficit at all, and I just aim for maintenance because it's going to be hard for me to hit that. So us being aware of other factors that can impact this as well. So if you are having breakfast, which, like I said, I work with people who don't have breakfast. I regularly have breakfast. There'll be the very odd occasion when I don't have breakfast. But for me, it's probably more 80-90% saying that breakfast is probably beneficial for a lot of people. There'll be a few people who it's not beneficial, and that's fine, depending on their goals, or it might be a phase that people go through. They're going into quite aggressive diet, for example, or people who are on weight loss medications. Trying to get some breakfast in is really helpful, but some people's appetite is just not there in the morning. So this is where we'll talk about some other tactics around that in a second. So if breakfast helps you or could help you moving forward, make it based around protein and fiber. That's my main goals around that. When we look at people's meals, they tend to get protein at lunch and dinner. They tend to get 1 or 2 servings in throughout the day on average. Breakfast is one that usually people fall short on both accounts. So making sure it's protein and fiber focused, but we're trying to get in 1 of a 5 a day if possible, but trying to make something filling and tasty and easy as well, affordable, repeatable. There's loads of words that I could throw out there that are really important with this. So protein increases your fullness, helps reduce your hunger, and it's been shown to reduce later intake of food throughout the day compared to just lower protein breakfast. So that's a real good start today. If you can get a good source of protein in there, and you're probably thinking, well, that sounds great and dandy, but what sort of things could I do? I've written out some examples for you. How cool is that? So examples: Greek yogurt with fruit. This is probably something that if you're going to have a protein breakfast, it's simple, it's easy, it's affordable, it's cheap, it's repeatable. My breakfast at the moment that I tend to have and repeat, if you follow me on Instagram or any social media, you'll probably see that I post about it all the time, is oats. I tend to weigh it out because I know I've got the right ratios for the texture I like. So 35 grams of oats, 160 grams of frozen berries, and about 200 to 250 grams of skyr yogurt. If you can get flavoured skyr yogurt, that'd be really helpful, but if not, then I'll put some flavour drops in there and add a bit of sweetness to it to bring out the sweetness in the berries. I have that on repeat every day, and it tastes like a crumble. Love it. I'm going to go and make it after this because this is going to be one of the tips. I'm making it the night before, but we'll go into that in a second. If you don't like that, something like cooked eggs, peppers, onions on toast. That's a really, really good, or beans on toast is a really good meal in the morning. It was a really balanced meal. High fiber, high protein again. Overnight oats with chia and yogurt. Again, yogurt's probably one of the most frequently had ones in the breakfast. This is something actually that I was going to talk about in another episode, but I'll just throw it out now. Breakfast foods are a myth. You can eat whatever foods you want at whatever time you want. That's completely fine. You don't have to have traditional breakfast foods for breakfast. If you want to have a spaghetti bolognese for breakfast in the morning, you have at it. If you want to have a curry for breakfast, crack on with it. If that is what you want and you can make it fit these guidelines around high protein, high fiber, then brill. Work towards your taste. What's going to excite you in the morning? I know that my breakfast, whilst it might not appeal to everyone, I really like it. It's really simple, it's really easy, it's really tasty, and I look forward to it when I have it. That's why I can repeatedly do it, and that's why it repeatedly helps me achieve my goals. I've gone off a bit of a tangent there, so we'll get back to it. Other options, this is what I was talking about with the GLP-1s that could be really helpful, is foods can feel like a lot for those people whose appetite is suppressed. Sometimes drinking calories can be a really easy way around that. So a smoothie, for example, adding a load of berries, some fruit in there, maybe some vegetables like some spinach in there as well, to help with the fiber content, but also the vitamin mineral content. but that can be a really nutritious start to the day. Make it yourself. You know what's going in there. You know that it's going to be really nutritious. You can buy store-bought ones, but they might not be as nutritious and might just be really, really tasty, but not as healthy or nutritious as they might advertise to be. Or something simple like a protein shake. This is something I'll have regularly. I might even have this. So tomorrow, because I'm at work, I will have a protein shake after my gym session in the morning if I go to the gym, as around 7-8 o'clock, and then I will have my yogurt, berries, and oats later on in the day as my next meal. I tend to have 4 meals a day on average, maybe 3, sometimes 4. So I'll push back that breakfast oats to later in the day, sort of a brunch or even just my lunch. So having something like a protein shake can be really useful. Try and have some fruit with it alongside it, or something that's going to have high in fiber to slow down the digestion, make you feel a bit fuller, but also make you just complement it and fill you up a little bit more, because protein shakes, fantastic, really high in protein, but not a huge amount of calories. So you might feel a bit hungry after them. Having a bit of fruit with them really bulks out with more fiber, more volume, and fruit's good for you and tastes nice as well. So that's sort of the options that I would go for. But like I said, you can have whatever you want for breakfast, whatever works for you, whatever's your bag, crack on with it. So with regards to the business in the morning, it has to just be good enough. That's all. Good enough is good enough. I've probably spoke about this before, but if you haven't heard about it, I went to a conference talk by an ARFID specialist, which is sort of extreme fussy eating. You might see it a lot with children with autism or learning disabilities, where they're extremely fussy eaters, where they can't even be in the same room as some foods. And I was blown away at how laid back and chilled she was about it. I was expecting a really clinical conference, but actually she was like, good enough's good enough. And that's one of the things I've taken away from that talk in that scope of area, working with people in extremely fussy eating, but also working with people in general, is that if it's good enough, crack on with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to wait for you to have the perfect plan in place. Actually, just try something, and if it works, brilliant. Is it good enough? Fantastic. So pick something that's repeatable rather than deciding from scratch every day. If that's something that I do, like I said, it just takes one decision. That's the way for you. Same with if you've got a busy morning and you're trying to freshen up what you're having for work every day, what you're wearing to work for, I should say. Plan that out like on the weekend. Tonight when I'm recording this, I know you're going to get it tomorrow morning, but trying to plan the next day ahead can be a really good way to take those decisions off of your future you when you are tired, when you might have had a poor night's sleep, when you might have got up a bit late or short on time when you've got something else to do. Planning ahead just takes away those decisions, takes away that stress, means that you can start the day at a bit lower stress. It doesn't feel as full on. So that's something like having breakfast prep the night before can be really useful. And this is one of the biggest tips. Prep the night before, prep your lunch, prep your breakfast if you can. You don't have to prep a whole week in advance, but having something that you can throw together in 5-10 minutes, like my breakfast, that you really like, and it's tasty and ticks a lot of boxes, just have that on repeat. You might get a bit bored of it and you might want to find another option you can have, or I usually say like 2 or 3 options of your main meals. Usually dinner people tend to rotate a lot more, but breakfast and lunch, like if you're taking lunch to work, having 2 or 3 options that you can rotate through depending on what you fancy can be a really good way to build that consistency. It just takes time to find those options. So try something. See if it's easy, simple. Try and get like a 3-ingredient recipe, a 5-ingredient recipe, or a meal that you can put together that's high in protein and good amount of fiber. Then you just give it a go. If you like it, brill. If you're okay, then maybe make some tweaks to it and try and improve it moving forward. Stuff like filling your water bottles, packing your lunch, getting your clothes laid out, all those sort of things can help reduce that stress, and actually means that we're walking in to work or whatever we're doing that day with a lower level of stress, ready to take on what the world has or what life has to throw us that day. Meal planning is associated with better diet quality and lower odds of obesity. Again, association doesn't mean that those things are caused, but I could probably say that there is some links there that could be drivers for that. But I'd be speaking about stuff I haven't read there. That's just my feeling from working with people. But planning ahead and not freestyling every meal is just going to be a lot less stressful. So it means that mornings will be less stressful as well if you're not constantly going around, have I got this in? What can I find to try and throw into a bowl to take to work with me? Or I haven't got lunch, so my lunch break is spent trying to find something for lunch. So I'm not actually going to take some time to relax and chill, switch off. Just means that you're starting the day off on the wrong foot or on the back foot. So, So, summary of today's episode. I've tried to whiz it around because I've got a few things to do before bed, like prepping my breakfast, like getting my work clothes ready, and all that sort of stuff. So, breakfast is optional. I would recommend trying to have it most of the time, but if it's not for you, it's not for you. You don't have to have it. It's not really going to impact on your long-term results. But if you're not getting the results that you want currently and you're skipping breakfast because you feel like you can't have it, it's probably worth trying to include your breakfast, because what happens then is you might say, well, I'm going to be eating more food then. But eat more food early on might mean you eat less food later on, or you're able to handle those cravings, that stress, that end point in the day where sometimes life falls, or your plan with food falls a bit apart. Actually, if you're a bit more well fueled going into that, those noises from the food in the cupboards might not be as loud, and you might be able to ride it out a bit better. Just try it. Next up, poor sleep, rush decisions, under fueling can make food choices a lot harder next day. So trying to just look after the other things around that influence your food intake. It isn't just that you don't know what to do. Often people know what they should be doing, or feel what they should be doing, but they're not giving themselves the opportunity to do those things. They are putting themselves under too much pressure. They're not prioritizing things like sleep. They're not giving themselves time the day before. They are trying to run on as little food as possible throughout the day and just ended up just actually hammering something because really stressed, something's happened and they're broke. And like I said, focus on high protein, high fiber foods, especially at breakfast. Start the day off on the right foot if you are having breakfast. Prep it the night before if you can. Just takes away stress, looking after future you, as I always say, and allows you to feel a bit calmer and more manageable in regards to handling the stress moving forwards. So that's been a quick whiz through on how to eat better on busier days. If you are struggling with this and want some further support, then please do reach out. I'm at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on all social media platforms. If you go to louispadiannutrition.com, there are lots of freebies on there for you. We'll be adding some new stuff onto there in the next couple of weeks, I think. There is a free 5-day meal plan and recipe. There is a calorie and protein calculator if you don't know how much protein and how many calories you'll be having for your goals. So there's lots of free stuff on there, and plus there's over 150 episodes of the Balance Approach podcast for you to follow, where I'll be covering similar topics like this. Apologies for that, my microphone seems to have cut out at the very end of the episode, but make sure you're subscribed to the Balance Approach podcast, and if you need any help on social media, just let me know. But if not, I'll catch you in the next one.